Hello, you listen to the Neil Lamptey Show. My name's Joey, and I'm joined by Paul.
All right, mate.
And by Neil.
Hello.
Let's get straight on with this. Moments of the week. Paul, you start us off.
I think it's got to be Steve Evans' rant, and not just going to cut through all the other bollocks. The most important thing he said was he gave our team quite a lot of praise, and it's like, yeah, he did spoke a load of bollocks. Some of it we'll go into, some of it there's no point, but he did sort of compliment the team. And what we talked about on the last couple of pods is whether or not this team had the mentality to get promoted. And one thing they showed on Saturday in the bucket loads was they had the heart and the mentality to dig them out of a shitty situation. And I think a lot of the players deserve a lot of credit for the way they fought and battled, and also the way they played football on Saturday. So amongst all the other rubbish he spouted, he did play the team a big compliment, and I think they deserve that.
Paul, I think all of us have probably retweeted the interview already, but just for the benefit of those who haven't heard it, give us some headlines from this interview.
Oh, I mean, he had a go at Mark Robins, called him Squeaky Robins, and basically...
I thought he should be England manager.
Yeah.
I thought it was brilliant.
Yeah, so... Thing is, I've never met Mark Robins. Maybe Mark Robins does walk around saying he should be England manager. We'll never really know. But he also said that the referee got a lot of decisions wrong. No, I can't really remember the referee making... In my opinion, I think he got the two big decisions right. Other than that, you're quibbling over other stuff. He sort of talked about, he's mentioned the fact we've got some good players, which I think he's mentioned a couple of times in the build-up to the game, and also mentioned the fact we spent quite a lot of money on some of our bigger name players. And, I mean, we'll discuss some of his finer points. I mean, he talked about the fact that they missed quite a lot of chances, and I think in a way they probably did. So we'll discuss that. I've seen other people go, "Oh, we were the better team after the player got sent off," and that's clearly not true. We in the first half, there were a long period where Mansfield were the better team, and probably on another day would have got 2 or 3 ahead, which I think would have killed us. They didn't, but they've created the opportunities, and I think so. It's not all of the things he said was utter rubbish. I think he had a couple of points which were legitimate, but. It's just you've got to be more professional than that, and I don't think he was. And I don't think besmirching an opposing team's manager, whatever you think of them, is really the best way to go about it.
Why has he got to be more professional than that?
Because I think me and you have big discussions about social contracts and things like that. I don't think you can. I think you've got to have a modicum amount of. As I said, I think the attacking on the personality of Mark Robins is uncalled for. However, I've never met Mark Robins. Maybe he is squeaky. I don't know. But in the terms of him being grumpy about some of the things, I think he was. I think he made some legitimate points. I think in his analysis of the game itself, he wasn't wildly wrong. I think, as I said, and we'll discuss it. I think Mansfield, for obviously against 10 men, for the second half, the first half, I think he had a right to be slightly annoyed with some of his players that they didn't take more advantage of that. And that's fair enough. But I think in his attack on the referee, I thought that was a bit weird. Because I don't think he got either decision wrong. And I haven't seen the handball he was mentioning, or there was definitely, their player dived in the box in the second half. That was clear, which he's whinging about. But I just think you can't just go around besmirching other managers. I just don't think that's really the right way to go about it.
Neil, you've seen it, no doubt.
Yeah, I've seen it. And the one thing that I don't know if it was actually in that, but I read it sort of quoted from the BBC Twitter account. He said, "We tore them apart and ripped them to shreds, didn't we?" I take issue with that one.
That's the main thing I took issue with. Yeah,
that's not right at all, is it? I mean, they came at us a little bit in the first half, but the second half. We more than matched them for a team that was 10 against 11. So, yeah. I mean, to throw that in there, I don't know whether he was just trying to make himself feel better or something, but that was just wildly wrong.
I thought that was the bit that was the headline that I saw, and I thought, I'll watch this because I get the impression that he's been wildly emotional and he thinks that they were the better team. And so I watched it. And actually, I thought he was quite balanced in a lot of the stuff. I thought, like you say, there was a couple of things. He's probably a bit harsh on the ref, and it is hilarious when after a game, both sides, like the fans, like furious with the referee saying that they gave everything the other way all game. I always think that's a curiosity because our fans, you could tell, were livid about his performance throughout the game, and I didn't really clock that the Mansfield fans were equally as bad, but that Steve Evans certainly weren't happy about it. I thought he was a bit dismissive of that ref in saying, oh, he's come up from the league below and he should go back down there. You kind of think, well, I'm not sure that's any of your business, mate. But the rest of it, I just thought he was quite straightforward and honest. I didn't think he was particularly histrionic or anything. He also said that they missed too many chances and that he told his strikers that they should have scored more. He was really complimentary about some of our players. I thought he was, to me, I thought it was quite a refreshing interview in a lot of ways because it was just not platitudes and, you know, Mark Robins sounding like... The other bit that I couldn't get my head around, Mark Robins sounds like John Cooper Clarke. He's not squeaky.
Yeah, no, not in the slightest.
But I thought, yeah, I liked the fact that because they chipped off right at the very end, hadn't they? But anyway, it was a bit of fun. Neil, moment of the week.
If that was Stephen Presley, we'd love it, wouldn't we? And I'm sure he's been like that a few times before when he's been talking about opposition. So it's kind of... I think, I mean, it obviously went too far, I think, in certain places, and we don't know what's going on the side. But I just sort of think of it, I've definitely seen Stephen Presley talk like that in post-match interviews, and I just thought it was quite funny.
He did himself a massive... The main one with Presley that I can think of is his reaction to the Worcester game, weren't it? Where he got himself out of jail a little bit because his reaction was so furious that you were like, well, at least you feel the same as we do. And it kind of got him off the hook for having lost that game to a certain extent because he was so furious with the players. I kind of think I'll take a bit of honesty and a bit of realness.
There was a bit after that where he said something like hours of sleep, lack of it, or something like that. Just the way he was talking after that game. It wasn't after, it was the Monday after, wasn't it? But a great interview.
Your moment of the week.
Mental Michael Doyle. That tackle. What the bloody hell was he doing?
I haven't seen it back yet. Is it as bad as I remember it to be?
It's just utter lunacy. And what makes me laugh is you just know if any of the other players on the pitch did that tackle, he would be going mad at them for their, like, what are you doing? We've just got a man sent off. We can't afford to do. And then he just goes and flies in with like one of the worst tackles he could possibly put in. I mean, it was sheer anger. And that's why I'm laughing at it, because it's, as a fan, you look at it, they're feeling as much anger as we are. That's good, but I mean, he got a bit lucky there, didn't he? Flying in like that, just like a
scissor kick.
Yeah, just. I mean, he didn't really catch the guy that much, I don't think. So he probably, and also the fact that we just had someone sent off probably went in his favour. The ref didn't dare send someone else off him straight away afterwards. But I mean, Michael Doyle, what are you doing?
The amazing thing about it for me...
Their player also didn't make a big deal of it, did he?
Sorry, Joe. I thought the other amazing thing was the fact that it came after Liam Kelly had made a really rash decision. And it was like, you'd think that the thought process would be, someone gets sent off, everyone's angry, someone tests the referee, and then the captain goes... Actually, we need to calm this down because we're all hot-blooded and we could get... And instead, he was like, you think you're going to be the angriest out of this? Obviously, he's just like, no, I'm going to be the one that...
This?
Yeah. You kind of think, are you really a captain? Is that what you're doing? But in a weird way, I guess... He then went on to... I thought he had one of his best games I've seen possibly all this season for us on Saturday. Especially, he really revelled in that kind of underdog warrior sort of game.
Definitely needed.
Yeah, so, all is forgiven, Michael. You absolute lunatic. I am going to go for... I'm going to stretch the concept of a moment, as we always do. And I'm going to go for the best overall display of anywhere on the pitch diving I've seen since the days of Richard Keogh in Johnson Clark Harris, who did a spectacular... And Paul, I know you're waiting to jump down my throat because you think I'm talking about the penalty specifically, but his entire...
No, I was stood next to you and saw Johnson Clark Harris fall over an awful lot during the rest of the game.
But it was... this is the thing. I think it was really...
It worked.
Absolutely, one, how he got away with it time and time again. But secondly, with 10 men, when you need to break the pressure down and get some yards, and that was the thing that a lot of players, Bayliss as well, who I'm sure we'll talk about, did a fantastic job of, was managing that game for 10 men. You'd think that they'd done that over and over and over again. It was really impressive. But yeah, Johnson Clark-Harris went down at the drop of a hat, but pretty convincingly enough that he was able to get maybe 10 free kicks in the second half. Yeah. What did you think overall of... Paul, you thought Johnson Clark-Harris had a pretty good game, didn't you?
I just thought he worked really hard. I mean, he has this tendency, it's a bit like Leon Best, where he wants to try and chest every ball. And sometimes you just flick it on, just do something else other than just trying to chest it down. In terms of, especially during the first half, it was just, he was trying to overplay it, I thought. But that desire to try and keep the ball and get going and play simple passes really gave us a building base in the second half. And I think he looks like a player who's come from a division above. And he stands out in that, in the fact he does look technically very good and technically quite solid in what he's trying to achieve. And also, he looks like someone who does know exactly what he's trying to do. As I said, he was trying to test it every time. It wasn't a case of, this is, I don't know what I'm going to do with this ball. Every ball, he sort of had an idea of what he was trying to do when it was coming to him. So, yeah, I think he did look really good in that game, in that battle.
Who else took your eye? Give us your full Mansfield rundown then.
I mean, the full Mansfield rundown's got to start with at the very start, where we started really well. We got out the traps.
Let's just go for that sentence again. It's got to start at the start where we started. I think we know what this episode's being called. Sorry, go on.
At the beginning of the match, not long after kickoff. We got into a very quick flow, and we created a couple of corners, and Rod McDonald got on the end of another fine Shipley dead ball and forced their keeper into a save. And we did start really well, and we looked really up for it. And there were a couple of players who started the game really well, Shipley being one of them. And I haven't really appreciated so far how technically good Shipley is at playing football. I appreciated his work effort and his attitude, but I'd never really seen how technically sound he was. And on Saturday, it shone through. The amount of times he took the ball under difficult positions and in difficult situations and didn't really give the ball away and kept the ball moving and simple touches and little bits of skill to get out of tight situations and then play a simple pass. And I'd never really seen that in him before. And I was really impressed with how Shipley sort of stood out as being technically very good. And I don't know about you two, but it was a bit of a revelation for me. And that's obviously my failing more than his, the fact I hadn't noticed so far just how solid he is when and I know it sounds ridiculous, he's a professional footballer, but the ball goes to him, he controls it and he moves it on, or he manages to beat a man or create space. And good on him, because he hasn't, he's been in and out of the side recently, but I thought on Saturday, going into the second half, he was up there with one of our men of the match. And I think he's a bit overshadowed by Bayliss this season, because he's not as flair and he's not as catchy in terms of what he does and how he presents himself. But he's really turned into a very good, solid professional footballer.
What did you make of his performance, Neil?
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I think it kind of follows on from some of his recent performances. I actually felt against Brighton, he showed himself to be a really sort of trustworthy player in there as well. And it's like Paul says, much of it's just down to not having to worry about some of that, the stuff that some players at this level do have to worry about, like bringing the ball under control. He seems to do that with minimal effort, really. So he's able to concern himself with the other things, which is kind of bringing other players into the game. And yeah, he's just it's a valuable asset now, and that's why I certainly would keep him in the team. And this is why you wouldn't see me switching or trying to get Barrett back in there for anything else, because for all, this notion that Barrett's a more attacking player and everything, I mean, I don't think you can discredit what Shipley's offering you on that left-hand side, which is good delivery, a good technique. He's working well with the players around him, and he's got a great engine. So yeah, it's I was really pleased with him at the weekend, actually. But like I say, I think it's continuing of that sort of the blossoming form that we're seeing from him this season. Where when he first came in, he was okay. He was settling into things, but it's only recently where he's kind of taken that leap into being quite a well-rounded first teamer.
Paul, I'm going to let you carry on, but I think there's a point you're going to make that I'll let you make. But if you don't, then I'll jump in.
Oh, okay. Pressure's on now. So yeah, so we started probably the better of the two teams. It then sort of flattened out a little bit, and then obviously the first big controversy is they punted the ball through, and Rose got goal side of Willis and took a touch and then went over. And as soon as it happened, I was like, that's a red card. Because I just think Willis bumbled into him. Whether or not he meant to foul him, but there's definitely a coming together. And as soon as he went to the ground, as soon as the referee decided it was a free kick to Mansfield, he had to go because he was the last man. And as I said, you watch the replay back, and Willis doesn't really argue. And more importantly for me is the man who could start an argument in an empty room, Michael Doyle, doesn't even argue with the referee. No one argues with the referee. And you're like, if it was that contentious, we'd be moaning. And no one was. And as far as I'm concerned, Willis touches him, he goes down, it has to be a red card. Unless you think the guy's diving. And how are we ever going to know that? And, in the Premier League now they have the TV replays. I don't think you're ever going to know 100%. So you've got to trust the referee. And in that split second, 100% saw why you give him a red card. That put us in a difficult position because, Mansfield, as we discussed last week, are a team in form, especially at home. And how are we going to deal with them? And Robbins didn't really make a substitution to start off with. He put Bayliss to right back, put Grimmer in the centre-back position. Unfortunately, Mansfield scored straight from the free kick in one of those bizarre, fluky ball bounce around and hit the post. And from then on, it was a case of, well, what are we going to do with this? We're 1-0 down against a team who are flying at home with 10 men. And for the next 20 minutes, I thought Mansfield did pull us apart. They did move us around. Their left winger, it was an unfair battle all game anyway. But for the rest of the first half, it was an unfair battle between their winger and Grimmer. Their winger had Grimmer every which way but loose, and it was sort of quite sort of worrying at times how easily and how often the ball was coming down that left-hand side and getting into the box. And they were pulling it behind teammates. They weren't getting clear shots away. And they were also, one of the things that Neil is big on, you could sort of see they had that slight arrogance of, doesn't matter if I miss this chance, another one's going to come, another one's going to come. And probably the most emphatic of that is right at the very end of the half, where the guy has a free header from about 7 yards out, and he heads it over. And you were like, that was probably, for Mansfield, that was probably the killer. Because we'd just begun to get some sort of foothold in the game at that point. But you did know that 1-0, you've always got a chance. 2-0, it was highly unlikely we were going to get back into that game. And that miss, you were just like, ooh, that's a bad miss. And at half-time, he took them in, and when we were down to 10 men in the first half, we played 4-4-1 with Johnson, Clark, Harris up front, trying his hardest on his own, but being very much isolated, with McNulty on the right, who wasn't really getting involved. He was trying a little bit, but he wasn't. You could sort of see that he was a bit nervous because he's not naturally helpful on the right, and he knows that he needs to get near Clark Harris, but he can't because he's... So... But it was, okay, big half-time conversation. What are you going to do? How are you going to get back into this? Because, other results were going our way. Defeat
in the end wouldn't have been massive, but a draw was going to be massive. Getting back into this game was going to give us that massive leap and push everyone in the forward direction again. It was something that we weren't expecting to get a result anyway, but also with 10 men, this really could be sort of season changer. So he came back out in a 4-3-3 in the second half, with Heim playing in the centre back alongside McDonald, and then Bayliss on the right of the midfield three, Shipley on the left, and Doyle in the middle. And Doyle's been a bit in and out for me this season, but on Saturday, as Joey said earlier, I thought he was magnificent in terms of not only just winning possession back, but also blocking lines of passes and making it difficult for the opposition to especially go through us in the middle. I mean, they had the left-hand side. I mean, that was a foregone conclusion. You knew as soon as that kid was up against Grimmer, that kid was going to beat Grimmer. But they didn't come through the middle, and they didn't really go down Haynes' side either. So we knew that they were winning that battle on that one side, but we managed to sort of block the balls into the box. And again, we probably started a bit slowly in the second half, but we looked a lot more solid. And then slowly but surely we managed to get a foothold in it with Bayliss. Bayliss is going to play in the Premier League. If he doesn't, then something seriously wrong with that kid, because he's just got it. I mean, he carries the ball forward 10 yards like no midfielder I can remember at Cov. It's just striding forward with that confidence and knowledge that he's going to make something happen, and he just makes teams wary of where he gets the ball, and he's difficult to stop when he starts running with it. He's quite a sort of Roy Keane-esque head down, carry the ball, then assess my options. And with him doing that, and Doyle and Shipley providing, solidity alongside him, we were looking the better side. And then Ryan Haynes decided that left back was no position for Ryan Haynes, and sort of started a run, played a convoluted 1-2 with Shipley, and had a cracking shot that their goalkeeper tipped onto the post. And you were like, okay, maybe this is our chance now. From the corner, they cleared it. Ball went back out to Bayliss, who played the ball into the middle. For me, the player throws himself in front of Johnson Clark-Harris, who has nowhere else to go but over. And we have the chance with a penalty, which thankfully he smacked into the top corner. Once parity was provided, I think we didn't really have many chances after that. But you got the feeling that we were sort of set fair for a point at least.
A quick word on the context and difficulty of that penalty as well, perhaps.
I mean, all penalties you've got the pressure on you, haven't you? I mean, with McNulty no longer on the pitch by this point because Ponticelli came on, and yeah, Ponticelli's a strange one. We'll probably talk about him in a minute. It was a big moment for Clark-Harris, but I get the feeling that Clark-Harris probably isn't that fazed by much. I don't think Clark-Harris is one of those people who's really worried that the goalkeeper's doing all sorts of his actions, or there's a 5-minute wait between the penalty. I think Jonathan Clark-Harris is one of the people who backs his ability regardless of the situation.
I thought it was. I agree with you. And I think that would have helped him. But I think, all things considered, it must have happened only a couple of minutes after the recognised first-choice penalty taker was off the pitch. And if he is the second choice, or if he's the newly installed first choice and it's just the first opportunity that he's had, then fair play for Robbins for being that prepared. But I also thought there was a really significant gap between the penalty being won and him taking the penalty, and that always makes me wary. And he was the player that won the penalty, and I don't like that being the person that takes it either. But he didn't mess about one bit, did he? He never looked phased throughout it, and it was a really good penalty. I thought it was one that I was pretty convinced was going to be missed, but I always think they're going to be missed. I was very impressed with how coolly he dealt with it. Less impressed about the way that he refused to celebrate with Ryan Haynes.
Okay, well, I didn't see that, but I think maybe he's just anti-ginger. But I think it would have been. I think if Biamu had been on the pitch, there might have been a more of a discussion about who took it. Because it was Ponticelli, I think he just looked at Ponticelli and it was like, if you try and take this ball off me, I will just beat you for the next week. So I think there was almost there was no worry about who was going to take that penalty. I think if it had been someone else, there might have been a bit more of a discussion over who had it. Because
I was worried when I saw Doyle loitering around. I know he used to take them back in the day, but I always felt that was more default, and he didn't really know what he was doing, and he just did the same side foot until he missed, and then he never took one again. So I was quite pleased when Clark Harris took control of the situation, and I think you're right. There was nobody who was going to be able to sort of force him off that ball because nobody really had the wherewithal to do that, did they?
Very quick diversion. I do want to announce now that the optimal way for us going up this season would be in the playoffs on pens with the winning pen scored by a Michael Doyle tackled penalty.
Yes.
I'm calling that now. That would be the best way to go up.
That's the dream, isn't it?
Yeah.
That round thing off lovely.
Paul, carry on. Sorry.
Well, the game. I can't really remember if there were many chances after that. I mean, Mansfield were resorting to long range shots because Dominic Hyam is an odd shaped bugger, but he just came in, didn't really mess around, didn't do anything difficult. I thought McDonald had one of his best games for a while. He was really solid. Again, Haynes looked good. I can't talk more highly of Bayliss, Doyle and Shipley. I think they played against four, and you didn't know they were a man short. All three of them absolutely raised their game, and all three of them just came away with... So I couldn't give any of them less than an 8 because they just dominated that second half in that midfield in a way that in the first half, Mansfield, their fat number 7, had run the game.
Yeah, they weren't.
Second half,
they weren't short of bad midfield, were they? Actually, it was, and it makes sense having been playing against a team with 10 men. They were good in midfield, weren't they? It wasn't like they were waiting to be overrun in midfield by 3 talented players. They had when they were on top looked very good, and it was on top of that we were able to overcome them. That I think was doubly impressive.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, there was about a 20-minute spell in the second half where you got the feeling that if Mansfield could have gone away and scored 2 or 3, and we wouldn't have been able to stop them. They just didn't. They did that thing that we do sometimes, where they created a lot of good opportunities, but never turn them into either goals or really good shooting opportunities. And I felt for definitely a spell that was more about them not using the ball wisely more than us defending well. In the second half, it was very much a case of we defended really well. And also, if their left winger had any end product, he probably wouldn't be playing for Mansfield in League Two, because he just kept skipping past Grimmer, and you were like, "Oh, he's going to put him. Oh, his final ball's shit again. Thank the Lord." Because if he had have had any end product, he would have walked away with a hat-trick of assists. Because it was just that clear. I mean, other than that, I didn't think McNulty was at his best. Whether or not, I think me and Joey disagree on. For me, I don't think he's looking a bit leggy. He looks a bit weary. He doesn't look quite as sharp as he has been. While I know that you sort of think he did still have that effort, I wasn't convinced that he looked as sharp as he had done. And maybe, as I said, he's never really played this many games before, or he hasn't played this many games in a season for a long time. And whether or not it's just catching up with him a little bit and could do with... And also, we don't know, how ill he was when he played through his illness. Maybe he's just not quite 100%, and maybe going to Wickham, maybe Ponticelli and his shins deserve a chance, or Biami should get a chance with Johnson Clark Harris.
Neil, what did you make of McNulty?
Well, I think he was quiet. Obviously, he was quiet compared to what we've been used to. But trying to be as pragmatic as I can be. I mean, the situation of the match didn't help, and actually, I don't think he's been that quiet in recent games. I think the last 2 games, the Brighton game and this one, it was sort of an off-form sort of performance across those 2 games. But then before that, I seem to remember him hitting the post against Colchester, and he was seeming quite lively. I thought he was brilliant against was it Accrington at home? That last home game, whatever it was, he was one of the only decent players in that game, actually. So I think it's certainly, in my mind, it feels really premature to be thinking about dropping our top scorer, especially when only last week we were talking about trying to find some sort of stability in team, and we've just come through a hard game, but there may be an element of team spirit there that we've kind of managed. We might be able to harness a little bit more. So I don't think we're in any position really to go dropping him just yet. I just don't think that we're desperate for points. We're desperate for goals. We're desperate to find some sort of cohesion again. He's had a couple of less impactful games, but I certainly would be starting in the next match. I don't think we have the squad really to try and think different. And that's not to say I don't think that subs are useful and they're not handy. I think actually that there's a little bit of snobbery in sort of football in general in terms of how subs are used, and they can be really quite. Just because you're not starting a match doesn't mean you haven't got a valuable role to play. But my own personal opinion on McNulty is that he's top scorer and he's the only one who's really shown that he can score goals this season. So we've got to stick with him.
I also think he's our best option for a goal out of nothing, isn't he? Not in the same explosive Naison way, but that I feel like if he gets the ball, his version of a shooting chance is a lot further away than a lot of other players. Neil, you talked about you're talking about there about what you would do in terms of keeping team cohesion, etc. Based on what you saw on Saturday, how would you be lining up tomorrow night?
I think there should be a lot of similarities. I'm guessing, obviously, Willis can't play. That's immediate suspension. So I have no real issue with the back four staying as it was. I'll give Robinson some credit for. I think he showed quite a bit of bottle to keep Bayliss on rather than Kelly. I think the easy option, especially after he dropped Bayliss back to right back for a few minutes, was to kind of just say, "Oh, we need some heads in the midfield and just stick with Kelly and Doyle." But he made the right call. He went with someone who's got a lot of drive about them and could actually manage that game far better and gave us a good attacking option. So, yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of Doyle and Bayliss in the middle if we can possibly help it. It's still the issue. We don't know who can play in the right wing. I think we're going to be playing sort of 4-4-2. I get the feeling Robbins will revert back to Kelly in the middle with Doyle and put Bayliss on the right wing because, quite frankly, there's no real option. He likes those three players. He wants them all on the pitch at the same time, but he also wants to play 4-4-2. So that as much as it frustrates me, I probably would just go with that again.
I just think that it was interesting for me on Saturday because you two have seen much more of Bayliss than I have, and the first game where you two weren't really raving about him was the first time that I saw him, which was against Swindon, and then since then he's kind of been shunted out to the right and whatever else. And it was only on Saturday was the first time where I got to see firsthand exactly what you'd been talking about, and it's just what I find frustrating after that game, which I found quite sort of, I was going to say fulfilling there, which I think is right, but still sounds odd, is there's no way he can play anywhere else but central midfield for the rest of the season.
Oh, God, no. I mean, that's the issue. I can't even remember who we were playing on the right-hand side when he was in the middle of the pitch. Who was it? Was it a mixture of players?
A load of different players, Kelly Evans and Maguire Drew and Jones before, I suppose, but he would have been injured by the time that Bayliss came in, wouldn't he? I suppose. Yeah,
it just doesn't make much sense because something was working quite clearly, and yet we were just rotating in that one position. So, I mean, whether we've got, I never really had much of an issue with Maguire Drew. I always thought he looked quite a handy option, but he's been pushed right back into the youth team. So I'm guessing Robbins just didn't think he's anywhere close to being his kind of player. But yeah, I mean, if you want the absolute maximum in the midfield, I mean, the Doyle-Bayliss dynamic sounds lovely, doesn't it? You've got Doyle doing his usual stuff, working along, helping Bayliss, and then Bayliss just having the absolute freedom when he wants to break from midfield. And the amount of time, I think it must be like once a game, he does one of those runs where he just shows his just speed, and it'll take it a good 30, 40 yards just in the blink of an eye. And I had a little bit of whinge about Clark Harris at the weekend because Bayliss did one of those where he just broke through from midfield and he basically took on about 4 different people. It was fantastic. And then at the end, he came to the end and there was no real option for him. There was an impossible pass through, and Clark Harris was a little bit angry with him. And I didn't like that because I kind of thought, well, yeah, he's a young lad. He's just taken on half the team, and just because he wasn't able to make that final bit, you started slagging him off, and I sort of think, oh, choose your battles maybe. But I certainly would. You've got to have him in the middle, really. But my issue is, I'm trying to get my mind in sort of Robin's mindset. I don't think he likes any other players except Vincenti on the right hand side. But do you really want a Vincenti right winger? I don't know if that's ever going to work.
If it means that Bayliss plays in the middle, I kind of don't care. I just think I just can't. I don't know why you would having seen. First and foremost, if Doyle has to play, I think we're almost on Iden to nothing if Doyle doesn't play, because we've seen what happens to the team without him in it, and it's not the same team, is it? You need his experience and resoluteness and bastardiness to really kick things off. Then I think you can play him and Kelly, and I think they'd played fine up to a point. But Kelly is a very different type of player to Bayliss, and I don't think he offers you the same forward thrust. I think I don't mind Kelly, and I don't want to be particularly critical of him, but it's not mad to say I'm not 100% sure what he does offer. He's not steel, but he's like sort of rough solidity, I suppose, isn't he? He gives you a base. But Bayliss is tougher and more like aggressive and mean, but also offers you a very clear attacking outlet. There were periods, and I mean, I will always try and bring things back to The Simpsons. There were times on Saturday where it reminded me of when Nelson Muntz played American football.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? With like kids just like grabbing onto his legs and him just carry on going forward anyway. It sounds like an exaggeration when you were saying earlier that he was fighting off 4 players, but it happened time and time again where they couldn't get enough men to him, and nearly every single time it petered out because there was nobody in front of him. But the point was to buy us some time and get us up the pitch a little bit. I just thought, I was like, what? I can't believe you're 18. It's mad.
Oh, that's it, isn't it? It's ridiculous.
And as well, he's not massive, is he? So he's reasonably tall, but he's not like he's not Reader Johnson, or like, he's not Sol Campbell charging up the pitch at 100 miles an hour, just sort of like players bouncing off him. It's like aggression in it. It's like determination and tenacity. He's right up my street. But I really, really, really can't see any excuse for him not playing next to Doyle. And I think that Shipley probably cements his position into the team for pretty much the rest of the season, because I think. And then the question is, do you, like you say, I guess it's, England's problematic right midfield position. We just need to work out what on earth to do there.
Could you not play Kelly on the right? If he's that desperate to keep those 3 in the team, play Kelly on the right side of midfield.
I don't know what he'd add necessarily. I don't know.
But if you don't trust anyone else, I mean, that's my only point is, like, if you don't trust anyone else to play there, and you desperately want to play Kelly, play Kelly. Just play.
You desperately only want him in the middle, though, don't you? I guess
but then you've got to make a decision who's better in the midfield. I think we all agree it's Bayliss.
Oh yeah, I completely agree. It's a ridiculous conundrum. We're having to worry about this, and it's purely Robin sees some value in Doyle and Kelly being in the middle because it offers him that sturdiness, that sort of maturity. But let's be realistic. When we play with Bayliss and Doyle in the midfield, we're a better team. I think we can all agree with that, can't we?
Yeah.
I think the other thing is it's also Robin sort of admitting he's sort of signed 3 duds in Vincenzi, Maguire, Drew, and Barrett. Because one of those 3 should be on the right hand side of this midfield tonight. I mean, tomorrow night, or tonight, whenever you listen to this, Saturday, through to the end of the season. Basically, we shouldn't be having a discussion of who's been shoved on the right wing. He's brought in 3 right wingers, 2 of them in January. So one of these 2 should have done more to cement their place. So, that's in a way, a bit frustrating. I mean, you watch Bayliss and you're like, well, this is clearly, he's not going to be here after the summer because he's clearly too good for League 2. So we've got to get the best out of him while we can. That's in the centre midfield. Build the team around Bayliss and Doyle, because that's the combination that works.
Do we have any final other observations, points on the Mansfield game?
I just like to throw in, because I haven't said anything about the sort of the controversial decisions, or maybe they're not controversial. I think both of them kind of showcase just how sort of ludicrous the laws of football can be sometimes, and just how easy it actually is to reason for both ways. And in a sense, that's why you get both sets of fans having a go at the referee. And actually, this is why VAR is barely going to work, because there's hardly any definitives on football match apart from maybe, you know, the ball going over the line, that sort of stuff, which you can kind of prove. The rest of it it's so much interpretation, it's ridiculous. That first one, you could argue, and this was being thrown at me from those people, that he wasn't, you know, knocked the ball away from goal. You sort of think, okay, well, that's an argument. Maybe, you know, it's not a clear goal scoring opportunity. But then you sort of think, well, actually, if you're clattered, does it really matter if you didn't have control of the ball? It's still a foul, isn't it? So there's two very opposing sort of views, and yet that's just, the referee's got to make a decision on both of them. So, I mean, my personal view is, I just thought, you know, you get sent off for that sort of tackle, don't you? I mean, last man, you just get sent off for that. It happens. We've created this sort of, you know, this interpretation, and it's just, you're last man, you take the man down. And actually, he put his arm out as well, so I felt like he pulled him back. He made the action, and that was an obvious one. The penalty, I still haven't made my mind upon, and that's how ridiculous that is, because there's two. You have to know what the intention of that defender is. Did he mean to fall over, or in like just cleverly or craftily try and get in the way of Clark Harris, or was it just an absolute mistake? Either way, there's then an argument. It doesn't matter if he meant it or not. He still impeded him. Should be a foul. And that's my interpretation of it. Is that football laws are rubbish, and you'll never be able to get them right. But yeah, and also VAR will never work either.
Paul, you were vociferously in favour of the fact that it wasn't a penalty, weren't you? You said unequivocally that was never a penalty, and I'll go to my grave swearing that it was never a penalty, didn't you?
It's always, and this is the bizarre thing about football. There's four of us in a row, and I can't remember what Joe said. We'll ignore Joe for a minute. So there's three of us in a row, and the first one happened, and Jimbo's like, "That's not a red card," and it's like, okay. I was like, "That's a red card." Joey, what was your opinion straight away?
For Willis's?
Yeah.
Off. Yeah, off.
Yeah. And then we saw it at half time, and Jimbo's like, still not convinced. And it was like, but he's fouled him. He's clearly fouled him. Once he's fouled him and he's given a free kick, it's like, ooh. It's like, Jimbo, if that was McNulty going through and their player hadn't been sent off, I'll be holding you off from going on the pitch to slap the referee. Because that's, as you say, that's what happens. Once you're through on goal, and I've seen people go, well, it was in Virgil's hand. It's like, if you think Willis has fouled him, then Willis hasn't thought, the keeper's got the ball in his hand, I can kick him now. Willis has fouled him. And Willis just walks straight off the pitch. And you're like, that's because he's the last man, and the guy's through on goal. The bigger question is, how did he get through so simply from a big punt upfield?
Is that the bigger question?
I think defensively, how is their striker through one-on-one with our goalkeeper? That player has to bring him down.
He wasn't through one-on-one with the keeper. Burge got that ball.
What? Because he was taken out.
No, I think
if he had stayed on his feet, was Burge still going to get the ball?
No, if Jordan Willis hadn't have been there, Burge would have still got the ball.
So you think? I'm still not. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I still think it was shit defending. Because the guy was like goal side of it. And his only option was either leave him be and see what occurred, or foul him. The second one, the penalty, you see it from the YouTube thing I've retweeted. You watch it, the first thing you'll be like, ooh, you see it from behind the goal, like the other goal, and the guy, in my opinion, sort of just thinks, if I throw myself in front of Johnson, Clark Harris can't get to the ball if I'm in between him and the ball. And basically throws himself to the floor and hopes the referee thinks he's fallen over. And as I said, you watch that through, and all the Mansfield players are moaning, apart from the guy who's just lying on the floor. And you're like, if you'd just accidentally fallen over, you'd be bitching like hell, and you're not. So, as far as I'm concerned, In both decisions, the culprit, hasn't complained. That says
that's science.
That's it.
That's
I mean,
fact.
the point's more that you can fairly reason against both of them, and you can, and whether or not players aren't reacting in the way that you expect them to. There's kind of that. My point was more around just based on perspective. You can have an argument, and based on the way that the laws of football are now are so vague in certain senses. In a way, it's a referee can simultaneously have the easiest job in the world and the hardest job in the world, because you could just go around giving absolutely everything, and you can pretty much say that you've got everything right as well. Because I mean, what you're judging is what you can see, isn't it? I mean, that's all a referee.
Yeah, but you can't make that any less. I mean, basically, the fact is, has he fouled him? Yes or no? Then that's basically, it's not vague. It's down to human interpretation, isn't it? Human interpretation,
which is ultimately vague.
Well, but you can't have it any other way, can you? We can't.
That's exactly my point. Paul. You literally cannot have it any way. And so, I mean, unless we're always going to have these arguments about what's right, what's wrong. We're always going to be sitting here talking here for 20 minutes and still not come to you've got a conclusion, I've got a conclusion, but there's rarely consensus on these things. And I mean, I was trying to move on to, not that we want to have a discussion about VAR, but my resistance to VAR is the fact that there's just so much. What's the point of it? All you're doing is giving someone another chance to have their say. And we have that in Match of the Day, and people still can't agree. It's just another view for someone to have their interpretation of something, when actually I think use technology for things that you can place down to fact to a certain point. So has the ball gone out? Define offside in a way that can constantly be sort of replicated, and then you can use it for that as well. At the moment, the laws are still weird, so you can't get that right either. But until there's some sort of stability in the way these laws are interpreted, or unless they just say, right, if the ball hits your hand, it's handball regardless of intention, then you can start using it for that as well. And that's where other sports kind of benefit from it, because there's things like hockey, certain things where it doesn't matter if you mean something or not. If it happens, it's just become accepted that that's one of the rules, and it makes it easier to referee. Football isn't the case, because it's solely down to, has this thing happened? Then did they mean it? Did they not mean it? And all these sort of nuanced sort of understanding of what's just occurred, and that's why there's so much argument about it. And some people revel in it, some people love it. But my issue is suddenly you start to bring in these TV replays, and then people getting annoyed because they're not clearing anything up. Well, we've had Match of the Day for 50 years; it doesn't clear anything up anyway.
Yeah,
I as Joe or not, I'm not in favour and never have been of TV replays. I think it's just, I say, it's the only way you'd ever know what was going on if all players were honest all the time, and all players aren't honest all the time. They fall over all the time, and different players require different amount of effort to fall over. What I found hilarious was the guy next to me, not Jimbo, but the guy next to him, who was going absolutely fucking mental at one point because the ball was in the air, their player fallen over, and their player got a free kick. And it was like, if that's a free kick, we might as well go home. It's a contact sport. 30 seconds later, the ball gets punted forward. Johnson Clark-Harris jumps for it and falls over. Referee! That's the clearest foul! And it's like, 30 seconds ago, if that was a foul, we might as well all go home. Like, just calm down, mate. It's like two players jumping for the ball. That happens. And it was like all game, as Joe alluded to it, Johnson Clark-Harris fell over. And sometimes you were like, you shouldn't have fallen over there. That didn't take a lot of effort to make you fall over. But he kept winning free kicks. And you were like, it's working. But you weren't sat there going, this is like, I'm enjoying this. This is how football should be played. But he was just winning free kicks. And you were like, well, okay, this is how this game's going. The referee, to some extent what you were saying earlier, he was giving free kicks for everything because it was like a legitimate, like someone's gone down, I'll give a free kick. Sometimes you've got to be slightly braver than that and say, you've just fallen over, just get on with it. But until the players are honest, and it's like Dele Alli did it again at the weekend, you're like, well, he's looking for it now, and the problem is with him is he's looking for it. The referees know he's looking for it, so even when he's legitimately fouled, he's probably not winning free kicks and penalties he should be.
But do we need them, to be honest? I mean, is that really... Because actually, the honesty isn't the issue. I mean, it's the interpretation. What's been a foul? So basically, if you go into the box and you're fouled and you stay on your feet, even though you're fouled, the referee won't give it.
Yeah.
So that's why the players are going down, because they're in a situation where they're either being forced to take a shot because they're off-balanced, or they gain themselves an advantage at elite sport level. Just sound like Gary Neville saying that, but that's what they're doing. They're trying to gain an advantage. Now, the alternative is they put their trust in the referee to be really brave and give them a free kick because they've had their ankle tapped. And that's not going to happen, is it? And that's where the diving comes from. And we call it diving, but I've never had that much of an issue with it. Basically, if you are fouled, if someone clips your ankle and you feel like you've been fouled and you go down and the ref gives a penalty, foul. I mean, you can't have it any other way. Otherwise, we get into this sort of weird loop where you can't. Go on.
But that's not what I'm saying. I mean, there are certain situations where you can see. I think Harry Kane did it recently as well, where basically they could jump over the goalkeeper, but they leave their feet. So the keeper's come out for the ball, like trying to stop the ball. They nip it in front of them and then leave their legs there, so the keeper takes them out.
Yeah,
and so that's, for me, that's dive. You could have avoided that. You've decided not to. You've decided
because the keeper's come flying out.
But what's the keeper meant to do? The goalkeeper's got to come out and try and win
Get the ball.
Well, he's not going to win it every time.
Well, he gives away a penalty.
Well, then sort of. But also, sometimes you get in the dangerous situation where they're leaving their feet in, and you get sort of the Stephen Hunt on Peter Cech, where it's like part of your responsibility as a professional footballer is also to protect your team or the opposing players. Just leaving your feet or your knee in, so the keeper clips you. That's sort of a bit of dangerous play as well. It's like, where's the safety in that? You can get out of the way of this contact. You're making sure you're getting the contact.
This is great chat, guys.
Yeah, we've extended this, haven't we? Sorry.
But I'm going to drop in Dominic's Wickham preview, and then we'll have a couple of listener questions, and then we'll bid everyone night, because I think at this rate we'll be clashing with Wickham kicking off. So here's Dominic, and here's Dominic. Hello, Dominic. Thanks for joining us.
Hello.
We were just saying just before we started recording, I feel like I've asked you about Wickham loads of times, but we couldn't have done. It feels like one that's a bit joyless to do, is it?
I mean, it's very you know what you get with Wickham. They know what they're about. They're about getting up to Accrington, where they'll like treat like a free kick in their own half as a chance to like put a set piece in. They're quite a very predictable team, but as you can see from their results, they're a hard team to defend against regardless. They've got a great spirit around the club.
What on earth happened to them on Saturday?
I don't know. Just one of those. I just saw the scores coming through. It was just crazy. I think they are a team that leaks quite a lot of goals, but it doesn't usually matter because they'll score goals at the other end, usually late on. A bit, style of football is different, but a bit like what we were like under Presley, where it's like you're almost sort of not that worried when we conceded, certainly during the first half of the Presley season, because you know we were probably going to score late on in the game. So I don't know how that affects the mentality of the side. Can lead to a bit of sloppiness, it seems.
In the last month or so, they've lost 4-2, they've won 4-3, they beat Luton at Luton 3-2, they beat Crewe at Crewe 3-2. So it's going to be a terrifying challenge for Robbins to make this the boring contest that he will want to. Will he be able to do it?
Well, we even saw back in December that you can't really shut up shop on them. It's just you just got to keep on rolling with the blows. Sort of jump on the Wickham carousel, and you got to try and jump off with a win, if that metaphor works.
Yeah, I think that's good enough. Maybe let's talk a bit more about what you would do from a Cov perspective against them. Then, what would you do in terms of the striking options at the moment? A lot of people are saying that Jonson Clarke-Harris should be straight in. Would you put him in? If so, who for?
Yeah, I've been impressed with Jonson Clarke-Harris. He just looks like he can do sort of both things that McNulty and Biamri can do. He looks like someone who's better than this division. I think he knows it. I mean, he's not. It's weirdly, like, you look at his attributes. He's quite fast. He's strong. He can absolutely hit a ball with his left foot. But he's never really been ultra prolific during his career, and you wonder why that is. And there is kind of reason why he is in League Two, despite his obvious talent. So I think just based on the caliber of striker he is, you've got to try and incorporate him into the team. The annoying thing about it is just because he has disrupted the dynamic of the strike force. Biamri and McNulty looks to be working, and now we've got this striker and we're having to change things up. It's almost like when Newcastle signed Espria. Yeah. But also bearing in mind that Biamri's only scored one goal this season. McNulty, over the past few games, looking a little bit out of touch. So it was a gamble worth taking. And yeah, as we've seen with Biamri and McNulty's form, sort of since the end of January, that there is a need for another good striker in this team that we can call upon. So yeah, I would have him alongside McNulty. I think that's potentially our best goal scorers on the pitch, and you want to have them even if you lose some of that link-up play that Biamri can provide. Unfortunately, Biamri hasn't scored enough goals, and now that we've got a better calibre of striker in, he's going to have to work really hard to get back into the team.
What about the rest of the team? Would you carry on with 4-4-2 or some vague approximation of 4-4-2?
Well, it seems like 4-4-2 is how Robbins has drilled the team with the two banks of fours. I'm not sure we're really set up to play another system. I think he's only really tried playing, I think it was like a 3-4-3 or something against Crawley. It's the only time he's really changed it up. And yeah, so it's like another one of those things, like when you're playing Football Manager and you're on a bit of a bad run, so you just end up changing everything, changing players, changing formation, and it just makes things worse. I think you've just got to sort of go back to base, understand what the team is fundamentally about, and try and stick with something, even if not perfect. You just got to hope that maybe the spirit will come through. You get a early goal, lucky, and hold out for a victory, and that's the start of another run.
Okay, final question then. What about a prediction? Will it be Coventry City or Adebayo Fenwa plus 10 that are victorious on Tuesday?
Yeah, I think the annoying thing for this game for us is obviously Jordan Willis has picked up the suspension in a performance that otherwise seemed to be pretty positive from what I heard about it, and maybe you would have wanted to like stick with an 11, especially a back four that's showed signs of working just when we're trying to reverse our run of form, and we've got to bring Hyam into the defence, who I'm not a massive fan of. I think he's a gutsy player, but I don't think he's the best in the air. He worries me. I remember on the opening day against Notts County, there was just a goal kick that you just watched go straight over his head. I think it was either Amiobi or Stead for Notts County was nearly in there. If they hadn't been slow, that would have been just a really, really sloppy goal to concede. And I haven't seen much from him to sort of contradict my view that he's not the best in the air. And yeah, I'm always a bit concerned whenever I see him line up. But hope it's a good game to prove me wrong, I suppose. But yeah, I think having Hyam in there isn't ideal against Akinfenwa, who can really dominate someone in the air, and will probably try and single him out. So I think we're probably going to lose this 2-0.
Yeah, I'm not thinking it's looking good either. Okay, thank you very much, and we'll speak to you next week.
Okay, speak to you then.
Okay, thanks, Dominic. Right, let's do some quick listener questions then, if there is any such thing as quick on this podcast. From Greg Sadler, should the club do another Accrington this season or give up? Give up there, he doesn't specify whether he means just give up everything and cease to be a football club, or whether he just means to give up more generally. He says, is there anything now that they can do to support a playoff push? Paul?
I mean, it'd be nice to have another cheap game. I was going to say the Luton game, but that's a Tuesday night, so maybe they should try and choose a Saturday game, maybe with 2 or 3 games to go. If we're in the promotion push, try and sell out. So again, kids for £1 and adults for £10. There's no harm in doing that. It might bring in the gate that we need, but we don't, it's difficult, isn't it? Basically, it's down to the team. The game on Saturday against Lincoln is probably absolutely crucial now. It's a bit late to be doing something special for that. If you're a Cov fan, up to nothing on Saturday, Lincoln's home's probably the place to be, because I know Lincoln have done something, so they've sold 3,500 tickets, I believe. So, maybe it's time the fans sort of back the club without the club having to do anything.
It's the place to be. Neil, question from Callum Hands. What's your perfect Sunday?
I like strawberry sundae. That's nice. And then no.
I think it's a reference.
We're talking about days, are we?
I'm not too sure. I think it's a reference to something. He says, "What's your perfect Sunday?" Mainly for Neil, but everyone else feel free to interject. He then later goes on to say that it's a reference that probably only you'll get. And it was one I must admit that I didn't get myself.
I was hoping that Neil was going to get it, because I know Neil's a lot better at this sort of pop culture shit than I am.
Really? I watched Apollo 13, and that's my life.
No, but you're really shit hot on like The Office and Partridge.
All right, what's my favourite Sunday? No.
This
don't
appears
get it.
to
Sorry,
be
Callum.
a reference to the film Hot Fuzz. Lead balloon.
Dear me.
We'll drop that feature for next week.
Yeah.
Paul, who will win or should win Player of the Season?
I think you probably nailed it earlier. It'll probably be Doyle. It would be nice if Jody Jones had stayed fit. We probably would have sold him in January, so he probably wouldn't have won it. It's been a bit of a season of halves, hasn't it? Like, other than Doyle, no one's really been really good all the way through the season. So, and even Doyle's been in and out, but he seems to have been there all season. So, Doyle.
Neil, who would you go for?
Well, we've got a quarter of the season left to go, so I couldn't say just yet. I'll wait and see what happens in these final games, because that'll determine it. If someone goes mad in the last 10 games and scores goals and stuff, then it'll be them. So it could be McNulty. So couldn't say just yet.
Who would you like it to be based on that criteria? I'd quite like it to be Jordan Ponticelli. I'd like it if he came in and scored 20 goals before now and the end of the season and stole it from the nose of Michael Doyle.
We didn't really talk about his cameo, did we?
I don't think I don't think we need to particularly.
Oh no, why Neil dare we?
That might be it for questions, guys. It is. Yeah, there we go. Paul, you've got 1 minute to talk about Jordan Ponticelli then.
No, there a lot of running around and a lot of shin-based action. The ball never seemed to actually look like he had it under control. It just seemed to bobble around him. But he sort of made an impact by his pure work rate and desire. But technically speaking, he didn't look technically very good. He just looked like someone who was busting a gut. Now, obviously, Neil disagrees with that, but I can't really remember him getting the ball under control. It was just sort of around him, and he just sort of try to kick it at times.
Can we not, at the very least, I mean, I was hoping that you were going to talk about the main issue here, which is his non-moving hair, which seems to be quite...
That's your issue, that's not my issue.
Well, it's the issue. I think we've agreed that it's the issue for... I think it's now, I'm happy to be challenged on this, but I think this is something of quite a modern thing. Of footballers' hair being able to withstand a full 90 minutes of athletic endeavour without once moving. And Maddison's got it in... I mean, Maddison is quite possibly the pinnacle of it. I've seen him picking up Man of the Match awards in good style still. Ponticelli very much the same. Not only has Ponticelli got the non-moving hair, it's also a hairstyle that I'm not aware of anyone else in the world ever having had. And... he's got, and I say this, I don't mean this in any critical way, he's got a face that doesn't look like it would go with any hairstyle as well.
I was going to say to you on Saturday, he just looks like he spent the last 4 hours down pit and he's just come out to go for a pint of stout.
Yeah.
I mean, he literally could have been born at any point in the last 2,000 years. Back in the day, he'd have just been a knight or something, or an archer.
That's a really good shout. Yeah, he would have been a knight, wouldn't he? Very specifically.
That's just, and his whole build with it is just, he is just like man.
Yeah, and I think let's go back to being fair to him. I think he was on. I think I've used that phrase 3 times during this podcast. Sorry, he was given a very difficult task on Saturday. In that, for the under-23s, he's able to hang around near the goal and smash a load of tap-ins in. And naturally, we were asking him to run around an awful lot and chase people down and to pursue lost causes. And fair play to him, because he really, really did go for it, didn't he? And he always does. Actually, whenever you get to see him, he always is trying his absolute hardest. I like the lad.
As I said, it'd be interesting to see how his career progresses, because he doesn't have a standout attribute, does
his hair. We've already
okay, other than hair, like on Football Manager, like hair 20, pace 5. He's not quick. He doesn't have.
Did you just say face 5?
I missed that. Is that what you said?
No, I said pace 5.
Pace 5. There we go. Yeah.
I mean, unduly cruel.
So he's not quick. He doesn't have the technical ability of.
He's not got a great
Bayliss
face, according to you. Yeah.
But he's definitely got some. As I said, I think he's going to be one of those players who's going to have one season in his career where he bags about 15 to 20, and it'll be whether or not where that is and what he does with his career after he has that one season where he's just everything he hits flies into the back of the net.
I think he came on last couple of games and helped us a lot, I think, in terms of his work rate. Yeah, I agree there's a technical work to do with him, but I think as far as him coming on and just making it bloody hard for defenders, I think last couple of games he's really, really done well. I like Jordan Ponticelli.
Good on you, Jordan Ponticelli. Right, I think we are all done then, are we? Yeah, let's get out of here. If you want to get in touch with us, at Neil Lamptey Show on Twitter, it's neillampteyshow@gmail.com for anybody who wants to email. Thank you very much, Paul.
Yeah, cheers, mate.
Thank you, Neil.
Thank you.
We'll be back next week to talk about Wycombe and Barnet, but in the meantime, bye.
Wycombe and Lincoln.
To talk about Wycombe and Lincoln, bye.